And okay, it's 5 minutes after 3, and I will start. So, hello everyone. I welcome you to our first series of online training session as part of the project Organic Waste in Focus and Discourse, Jordan and Egypt, also known as short Biowaste EgJo. The project is funded by the Advisory Assistant Program of the German Federal Ministry for the Environment, Nature Conservation, Nuclear Safety, and the Consumer Protection. The University of Rostock in Germany is the lead partner, cooperating with our local partner, the Egypt Solid Waste Management Center of Excellence at the Ain Shams University and the Jordan University of Science and Technology. The professor from both partner universities is with us. Professor Hani Abu Gattis is on the, you'll see him, and I think Professor Shireen is also there.
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, welcome, Dr. Shireen. The project aims to support the development of comprehensive concept and a strategy for planning and implementing organic waste management system. One of our key goals is to improve the capacity of university related to organic waste management to support sector development in both Egypt and Jordan. In this context, we organized this series of training sessions and we decided to open this session behind the project partner. That is why you see so many and you see the flyer and also social media, especially for the young professional group of ISFA. Today, we have Dr. Frank Scholvin with us, who has many years of experience in the biogas sector. Dr. Scholvin is the founder and one of the board members of the Institute for Biogas, Waste Management, and Energy. He is an environmental engineer with a long background in biogas research and consulting. He has previously worked at the German Center for Bioenergy Research, where he served as head of the Biogas and Biochemical Conversion Unit and later as the scientific director of the center. Before giving the floor to Dr. Scholvin, I kindly ask everyone to keep their microphone muted during the lectures. If you have questions, please write them in the chat. I will monitor them. We will have short break after each hour, and before the break, I will try to address some of the questions because we have limited time. So without further ado, please, Dr. Scholvin, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much. I will share my screen for you because I have prepared some slides, and it's a pleasure for me just to contribute to your workshop series here with some of my knowledge. And I hope, that everything will be well understandable for you, because I'm not the original English speaker, but I give my very best today. Yeah? And I will give you some insight into the biogas process and technology on the background that we can use it for utilizing organic wastes, organic residues, and produce energy out of that. This is something where we have a lot of experiences and where I am working for since more than what it is now, almost 25 years. Yeah? And I am working here. You have heard the introduction, yeah. And with my 11 colleagues, I'm working especially for biogas plant operators, helping them with all technical issues, with all questions for strategy development for a new plant, for existing plants, and we calculate greenhouse gas emissions for them. So there is a very deep knowledge base about biogas where I want to try to give some insights for you all, what that means. And if you have some questions, please share them in written form. I think it's the easiest way. And before each of the breaks, I will give a bit the floor also for discussion, just to answer your questions and take up probably some of your thoughts. Because I'm working, just to be honest, I'm mainly working in Europe. I have seen plants also in South America and Asia. But the focus of our work is Europe, and I know that the conditions here are sometimes a bit very different compared with conditions in other countries and other regions of the world. But the process, the technical processes and the biological process for sure is the same everywhere. So I am convinced about that, at least. Yeah, what is biogas? Just starting with that, because my lecture today will be on the basics. Yeah, so and I hope that you will not be disappointed because you know everything. Yeah, but that's how we made the design of this presentation here, just to start with the basics, and probably can go into some few deeper questions also within the questions what you have. Yeah. So the main process parts are visible in this slide here. So there is biomass, and biomass is a very far range of substrates, of materials, yeah, what can be used in the biogas production process. Yeah. It is most important that the substrates, and I will come back to that later, the substrates are biologically available for microorganisms and for anaerobic microorganisms to be consumed. Yeah? And that can be residues from animal farming. Yeah? It can be straw, it can be energy crops, where we focus in Europe a bit on. Yeah? It can be organic waste, and that's very close to the workshop series and all, just municipal separate collected organic waste can be used. Also mixed waste can be used as long as there's enough organic material inside. And that is used in some kind of fermenter, yeah, and must be brought to a place, to a central place where a biogas plant is located. And then it's under anaerobic conditions. That means without oxygen availability, yeah, processed by microorganisms, and these microorganisms produce so-called biogas, and biogas is mainly constituted from methane and carbon dioxide, and that can be used to produce electricity, to produce heat, use it as vehicle fuel, use it as chemical feedstock, more or less like natural gas as we use today. Yeah? And the second product out of this biogas production process is the digestate. We call it digestate. Yeah, that's the residues of the microorganisms where we have all the nutrients inside, what we had in the substrates. And that can be used, or is typically used, as fertilizer, to use it on fields for fertigation, for increasing the water holding capacity, for example. And that's what I want to speak about the next 2.5 hours, something like that. Yeah. And yeah, but that's the overall picture, what we will speak about. When you want to investigate that a bit more in pictures and movies, there's a lot available on YouTube, for sure. Yeah. And there, I think it's a very good overview what you can also get from the European Biogas Association. So when you tick the link here, I will not do that now, but when you tick the link, you can also watch in a video how the process is organized and what are the basics of the process. And I can only encourage you just to look a lot of videos, some which are painted like this one here, and highlighting the main points, but there are a lot of videos available also about practical plans that you get an impression how the process looks like in practice in different sizes. Yeah. But that's something what I want to skip, but you will get the slides and then you can use this link here. Yeah. And as a first part, I want to speak a bit about the development of biogas production. What did we achieve until today? And when did it start? Not into the very deep history of biogas production. Then we would go into wetlands. Yeah, in wetlands, the process takes practically place, and the process takes also practically place in a cow stomach. Yeah. Also, there are these so-called anaerobic microorganisms active. But I want to look a bit more on the industrial history. Yeah. So it's more or less 120 years ago that the first inventors have seen, oh, that's a process about what we can take use of. And in India, for example, the the street lighting was processed with gas, and that gas was produced from sewage sludge around 100, 110 years ago, something like that. But today we are speaking about more industrial-like plants. And here you see, when we only focus on Europe, where do we have most biogas production? And that's a unit, what you see is a unit of energy production. How much biomethane and biogas is produced in the different countries. In the status 2023, that increased a bit again, but just the general picture is the same today. So Italy and France will more or less in the close future overtake Germany, but still it's the highest biogas production in Germany. And you see the very different numbers here. And when you just compare the size of the countries, how many inhabitants are there, or what space do they have, that is not reflecting with numbers here. And what we see here is that it dependent on the incentives, the governmental incentives to build biogas plants, to produce biogas, or to produce and use energy from biogas. These incentives enforce building of biogas plants or don't enforce this process and this development. And here we see that we have in Germany a very long history of very attractive incentives to invest into biogas production and to build biogas plants. And in the picture, we also see two different colors, the light green and the dark green. And the light green is the production of biogas, what is not upgraded to natural gas quality. And the dark green numbers is the share of biogas, or the share of energy coming from biomethane. And biomethane is a gas coming from biogas where more or less the carbon dioxide is taken out, and that has the same conditions, the same properties as natural gas, and can substitute natural gas directly. And also here you see many differences. There are some countries where we only see biogas production and more or less no biomethane production. And some countries, for example, like Denmark, which have incentives which are mainly focused on biomethane production and substitution of natural gas in the gas grid. And so we have, for example, in Germany and Poland or Czech Republic, mainly plants which are producing biogas, not upgrading it, but using it for electricity and heat production on site, close to the biogas plant. And other countries like Denmark, where biogas production is focused on injection into the gas grid, and then as there's more or less no relationship between local production and local energy use. And that has a lot of advantages. I will come back to that later, but that's just to explain the numbers, what you see here. Then I give you a picture what is rather old, but illustrating the development very good. That's the development of biogas production, also as energy unit here on the left side, petajoule. It's number of energy what was produced out of biogas over the time from 1991 to 2015, so almost 25 years. And here you see the annual growth of biogas production in the blue line here. So we had always a good growth in the range of 10 to 20% per year increase. And then we see a very strong decrease and increasing again, and a very strong increase here. And this is related also again to the incentives which were introduced by the government. And here we see very good, because we introduced a new governmental rule for enforcing electricity production from biogas in the year 2004, for example. And in the year 2006 again, 2006, 2007, yeah, and that's something what we see in the number of investments into biogas production and in overall energy production then too. And this is something what must be thought about very careful also by the government. What kind of incentives could stimulate this market? Because when I just compare, yeah, and that's not so good message, yeah, when I just compare the production cost of energy, yeah, out of biogas with fossil energy prices, it is still the situation that the production cost of energy from biogas is in most cases, I would say, in most cases, higher than just buying natural gas or oil, fossil oil as energy carrier. And therefore, it needs some type of incentives. And there's a lot of different incentives which are possible. But when we see investments into biogas production, then it's important to have some incentives. That can be tax reductions, that can be direct incentives and money. What is coming to the producers, it's very different ways. That's probably some numbers for introduction, just to see that. And when you want to hear some numbers, I would say, so in Germany, just in Germany, we have around 10,000 biogas plants. That is probably nothing compared with India or with China. But in these countries, we have a very huge number of very small family-sized biogas production. And in Germany, the biogas production is typically more industrial scale, so there's no family-sized biogas plant. So that's all industrial technology what is used, and has a larger scale, I would say, where we use, and I see the smallest biogas plants, where we use around 5,000 tons of manure, for example, per year, or 5,000 cubic meters of manure per year. And that's clearly not family sized. And therefore, when I see it on the international level, we have in Europe the highest numbers, but it's not necessary to have them. It's probably also connected with incentives, what we had in the past, because the advantages from biogas production are more or less everywhere the same in the world. And substrates, so biomass, what we can use for the biogas production process is more or less also everywhere available, not only in Europe. And therefore, I have collected a bit the advantages, what are related to biogas production. The most discussed point, the upper point here, that's renewable energy production and reduction of CO2 emissions. It's always under discussion, just in South Africa now, the COP25 meeting there. Where are the targets where we want to go to? But that's only one point, and it's a very important point, very clear. Related to the energy supply. The second important is just the reduction of methane emissions, which result from storing organic material. So, for example, manure from cow breeding. When we only store it, we will have some methane emissions and methane slippage from storage, also from organic waste. When we only store it and don't have a very good composting process, then methane will be produced out of that and have direct emissions. Another advantage is, and I take the round to the left here, another advantage is the decentralized energy supply, because we can supply energy at the place where we treat the organic material. And that is typically not in a very large central power plant. It's a local plant where we could also have a good fit of energy production and, for example, the energy demand of a small village regarding heat, regarding electricity, regarding vehicle fuel, without having any necessary transports of fossil fuels, for example, to that village, so that it can be a good solution, decentral solution. Then we have a diversification of agricultural income if agricultural companies operate biogas plants, or also when waste management treatment, when waste treatment companies are adding a biogas plant to their activities, then they have also an additional income, for example, from energy sales. So they are not only dependent on the gate fees for organic or for wastes, not only for organic waste, but also for other wastes. Then we have, based on the experiences with the technology, a very reliable energy supply. And because it's running typically 24/7 all the year through, having sometimes some small standstills for maintenance, but typically this type of energy is available independent on the sun when it's shining or the wind when it's blowing, but it's still renewable energy. We can strengthen the rural or decentral infrastructure with that. We have a reduction of odor emissions. So when you compare organic waste, when it's collected and dumped on a landfill, for example, then it raises very high odor emissions. When the organic material, the organic fraction is treated in a biogas plant, and we can produce out of the digestate, what is coming out of the plant, also some type of compost. This has much less odor emissions. Finally, very important, we can also save mineral fertilizers. When we take out of the waste stream the organic fraction, and when we have it in a good purity, without impurities, then we can bring the digestate after the biogas production technology or the process. We can bring back the digestate to the agriculture, and the digestate contains all nutrients what we had in the waste, and these nutrients will fertilize the agricultural land again. And so we can circulate the organic or the nutrients which we find in our meals, for example. When we have the residues of our meals, collect them separately, put them in a biogas plant and use the digestate on agricultural land, we will have a circulation of nutrients, and on the agricultural land, again, our food is growing. And so we have a total loop, what is quite positive. So just leaving these general questions around the biogas process here, I will come to more details of the process. And I will start with the biological process, but I will give you the floor. If there are some questions, well, just raise them. Because I will leave this topic now, and I will have a short.
There is a question in the chat from, I think, the second or third slide, that it is it's a question from the typical development curve that you showed us, and the question is, why is the production of LFG almost the same after the year 2004? Does it indicate the limitation of the production, or is it related to sustainable production of the LFG?
That's a very, very typical European question, because in Europe we had an introduction of the so-called landfill directive, and that can be the year 2004. I'm not exactly remembering what time that was.
2005. 1st of June 2005.
Oh, great. Thank you very much.
The ban on the landfilling of the organic waste management.
Exactly. That's because there you say it, it was a ban of organic waste coming to landfills in all European member countries. And therefore, after the year 2005, there were more or less no incentives to take out of the landfill more landfill gas, because because no organics came into the landfills afterwards, and therefore we have this flat curve then, because more or less all larger landfills just had a landfill gas collection system before, and there were only the very few installed afterwards, after that act. And then the focus of the companies building landfill gas solutions was always outside European Union companies.
Thank you.
Yeah.
There is two other questions, but I will ask only one question because the other one, it's about the modeling of biogas, and I know that you will come to that point. So I will only stick to this question that you mentioned the benefits of using the digested as a fertilizer. Are there any concern in this regard that the contamination will go through the change of through the agricultural change and food change?
Yes, yeah. For sure, yes, yeah, because it's very important to have more or less very high purity of the organic wastes when you process it in the biogas plant and bring them back as a fertilizer. And when you have very high heavy metal contaminations, for example, you should not bring it back to the field. And typically, so I know it from the European countries, but I have also seen it in some countries out of Europe, that there are typically limitations given what is the allowed concentration or the allowed dosage of heavy metals or also organic pollutants, what you can bring out on a field. And clearly we have to be in line with these governmental laws. And when we speak about municipal solid waste, then you know that when we have mixed waste, you find everything inside: batteries, cars, or parts of cars. Everything what is fitting into a waste bin will be inside, and therefore we can typically not use mixed waste. We need to have a separate collection of organic waste, and when this collection works quite well, and it needs some education of the people, then we can have a pure material without heavy metals, for example, or with a low without is impossible. But with low concentration of heavy metals, that land application of the digestate is possible and is a very good solution. That's
Okay.
yeah, and we have everything in the waste, and we have also to control most contaminants. Yeah.
So the first key takeaway for the people who are mostly here are the decision maker and leaders of tomorrow. They are all engineering students, and this is the first key message takeaway, that source separation is very important to have like a sustainable organic waste management. You cannot produce a compost or digested that can be used in agriculture out of mixed waste. So with this, I think the other questions are more in details, and I know that you will come into them when going to the next slide. Please.
I will switch to the slides again, but I can just give a small answer on these questions because I cannot really explain you the IPCC model, how it works, and I also do not know if there's some open source model. I assume not, because they try to earn money with their work. That's my impression here, and that's a good question, but I have to leave open it. Coming back to my slides, the biological process. There we are again very close to that. What happens with the constituents of organic material going into the biogas plant, and the main component of what can be converted into biogas, that's important. What can be converted is all types of sugars, I would say, to say it a bit easy, and all types of degradable organic material. And therefore, for an idealized process, you see these formulas here on the slide. What happens, and probably you know more about composting processes. In composting process, we take the organic matter here as sugar, the organic matter, what is converted with oxygen into carbon dioxide and water, and degraded on this pathway. But when there's no oxygen available, yeah, then we still have typically microorganisms available. And these microorganisms live under so-called anaerobic conditions, so no oxygen available. Yeah? And they can also degrade organic matter. Yeah? And their degradation path is different, yeah? Releasing much less energy, what you see on the right side here. Yeah? And the typical degradation from sugar is then into methane and carbon dioxide. That's two gaseous products which will leave the process then. And typically we have a bit less carbon dioxide than methane. Yeah? So methane we have anywhere between 50 and 75%, and typical until 65%. And yeah, the second remaining gas is carbon dioxide, and then there are some trace gases also additionally, but that's the main conversion pathway of biomass here. Yeah. So when I go forward, the microorganisms, yeah, what we have here, they need, and that's the conditions what you have to realize when you are the engineer for the plant. Yeah? You have to take always into mind, yeah, the microorganisms are your employees finally, and you have to create the best conditions for them that they like to work for you. Yeah? They don't get paid, yeah, but just that they have fun to work. Yeah? They need some conditions, and these conditions are collected here. They need water, yeah? So at least 50% water in the process, and that's just dry. Yeah? They also like it when it's liquid. Yeah? It must be anaerobic. Yeah? So many of the microorganisms are strict anaerobic, so that means if there is some traces of oxygen available, then they stop working. Therefore, we have to keep the microorganisms in a covered tank, in some kind of tank. Yeah. So they like it to be warm. Yeah. And that means they need temperatures anywhere between 38 degrees Celsius, so like our stomach, for example, or the cow's stomach, up to 55 degrees, sometimes a bit higher, but that's the range, yeah, where they like to work. Yeah. Then the pH value of the material where they live in must be around neutral. Yeah? Although there are some different steps of degradation, which when you want to optimize the different steps, yeah, so it's a degradation chain of different microorganisms, and all these microorganisms need a bit different conditions, but typically that takes place in one tank and is only, yeah, separated in some scientific projects. But in the practice, typically you see one or two tanks, and there are always microorganisms inside, and all these processes take place in parallel. Then it's very important that you have no inhibitors in the substrates. Yeah? That means antibiotics, for example, disinfection substances, heavy metals. They will make the process slower, or the process stops totally. And only one example, if you have some cleaning water from waste trucks where you have disinfection substances inside, don't put that water into your biogas process, because with that water you can kill all the microorganisms what you have in the biogas plant. And that's some small things, yeah, what could happen in practice, with a very important result that all the process stops. So then they are hungry like you all, yeah, and they need continuous feeding. Yeah. So the microorganisms are typically not able to go to some substrate. The substrate must come to them. And as far as they get regularly some organic material to be degraded, yeah, then they feel well and they work very intensive. Yeah. then they need, like us, nutrients. So we have to take care that the nutrient supply is quite good for the microorganisms. And what you have to keep in mind, the microorganisms are very small, and they only can eat the substrates, the organic matter, out of the surface of the substrates. And therefore, it makes sense that the biomass, what is fed to a biogas plant, is crushed. It must be in small pieces, so it's much easier for them to eat a squeezed melon compared with a whole melon. A whole melon could come out of the process without looking in the same way as it came in. But when it's crushed, then it will be degraded. And finally, the end products must be removed from the process. That means that the gas must be able to come out of the process, and the digestate must be taken out of the process. That's the main conditions. And here I have also some numbers for you when you want to have it in numbers here. The typical range for the temperature you see here on the right side, I would say more or less 38 to 58 degrees, something in that range. And some first processes there will take place. First, always the hydrolysis and the acids generation that can take place also at lower temperatures. But then you must separate the processes in different tanks. It makes not always sense. Then we have a pH value where we also have a difference between hydrolysis and methanogenesis. But the main process is the methanogenesis. That means the methane generation. The biogas generation that needs a pH value around 7. Also, the CN ratio is very important, that there is always enough carbon and enough nitrogen. It's in the range anywhere between 20 and 30. And solids content must be, and it's related also to the water availability, lower than 30% typically in the process. Not in the substrate, but in the process. That's always important to differentiate. You can have a straw, for example, as substrate, put it into the process. As long as the process is liquid and there's enough water available, then the process will work. If the process gets very thick from the material, then you have to add water. And then we have also the ratio with phosphorus and sulfur, and we need some essential trace elements. That's mainly iron, nickel, cobalt, molybdenum, and selenium, where we have to take care, and therefore also in industrial production, we have to take samples, taking that to a laboratory and analyze, especially these trace elements, to have a bit more insight. Is the process meeting the requirements of the microorganisms? That's something where the operators have to take care. Then there are some conditions which will result in an inhibition of the biological process. And that's availability of oxygen, what I sometimes told now. But then it's also hydrogen sulfide, H2S. If we have too much H2S, then we have that in the solution, and that will inhibit the microorganisms from working. Therefore, the H2S must get out of the process, or sometimes you have to add additives to reduce the H2S concentration in the liquid in a biogas plant. Then volatile fatty acids, they are produced in the so-called acidification process, the first step of degradation. And if they are increasing over this limit of around 2000 milligram per liter, then the methanogenic bacteria, they reduce their speed and their working time, and therefore the biogas production will be reduced. So we have to take a look on that, and there are some laboratory analysis what you can do in place of a biogas plant. That's possible. The same with ammonium nitrogen, where we also have to take a look on. And that's, for example, a challenge when we only have chicken manure. Chicken manure contains very much nitrogen. And when we want to process in a biogas plant chicken manure only, then it's more or less impossible because you have very, very high ammonia levels in the process. And then you need some additional technology to take out the ammonium from the process to reduce it below with 3.5 gram per liter NH4. Then we have some heavy metals, which can make damage to the microorganisms here, and additionally antibiotics and disinfectants. So that's to be considered when you should be one day operator of a biogas plant. And then it could get important for you. And then we have two other factors which are also important for finally the design of a biogas plant, of the digesters, so the tanks of a biogas plant. There's the so-called hydraulic retention time and the organic loading rate. And that's two factors. I will only touch them today here. It's two factors what are impacting the behavior of the microorganisms, because the microorganisms need time to duplicate, just to get more and more in your process, and they have they need time for that. At least 14 days, I would say. If you have a process where the so-called retention time is less than 14 days, then you will wash out the microorganisms, and finally you will have no microorganisms or very few back in your system. And the retention time means how long does it take that a piece of substrate, what is coming into the biogas plant, how long does it need that it comes out again on the other side. That's impacted by a lot of factors. That just what hydraulic retention time do you choose? It's dependent on how degradable is the input material, what you use in the biogas process, and what kind of digester type do you use. I come to that a bit later. How much recirculation do you have? So typically you take some of the material out of the digester and put it into circulation and put it in again in the front of the digester to mix it with the fresh substrates coming into the biogas plant. That influences clearly the retention time of a piece of new substrate coming into the process. And often it's a question, what is your target? What is your strategy? What are you earning your money with in operating a biogas plant? For example, in waste treatment, typically you earn most money with the gate fee of the material, when you bring it into the plant. And then your interest is to bring as much as possible substrate through the biogas plant per day. But if your main interest is the biogas yield, the energy, what is coming out of the biogas plant, then you need a longer retention time. You must build a bigger plant then. That means long retention time means always a big plant. But then the substrate has more time to be degraded, and you will get more biogas out of one piece of substrate. And then it's a question, it's an economic optimization typically. And if you have to pay the substrates, then you try to get as much as biogas as possible. If you get paid for the gate fee for the waste, then typically you try to get as much as gate fees as you can and process it as fast as possible. And the second factor, organic loading rate, also to say some words about that. It's very important that you don't overfeed and that you don't underfeed the microorganisms in the process. When you overfeed them, then you will have an accumulation of organic acids. And organic loading rate means how much organic material do you bring into a fermenter per cubic meter fermenter volume and day, for example. Yeah. So it's a question of volume and time. Yeah. And when you underfeed the microorganisms, then they bore and they will not be that active. That's what you know from young people sometimes. Yeah, if they are not enforced to do hard work, yeah, then they look into their mobile phone. Yeah? That's what the microorganisms also do. Yeah? When they are not getting enough to eat, yeah, then they do anything else, but not producing biogas. Yeah, that's probably some issues regarding dimensioning of fermenters and some typical times here. Typical retention times is when we have so-called discontinuous process. That means, or plug flow, we say also, that a substrate comes into a fermenter and then it stays controlled for a dedicated time in the fermenter or in the digester. And then it needs, typically 21 days at least in the fermenter. But when we have a CSTR, that means completely stirred tank reactor. So that's a reactor what is totally mixed, and what is continuously feeded, every day feeding or every hour feeding, and every hour some digestate comes out. Then you have always a full mixed system, and you have always the challenge that fresh material will more or less directly leave the digester again. And therefore, in this type of plants, we need a longer retention time, and there typically we have something between 30 and 100 days retention time. So if 1 cubic meter substrate comes into the digester, we need a volume between 30 and 100 cubic meter that we can guarantee with 30 to 100 days retention time. And typical organic loading rates is also, and we always calculate with the organic dry matter. Organic dry OTS is here, should be ODM, sorry, it's not English. There we have 2 to 8 kilogram organic dry matter per cubic meter digester volume and day in the feeding. And that works quite well. Yeah, and out of these numbers, we can calculate the necessary digester size. And out of the digester size, finally, it results the investment. What does it cost to build this biogas plant? And so we have this relationship here for the digesters. And then I make a switch to that, what comes out of the plant. I mentioned it earlier. We speak about methane and carbon dioxide mainly. And methane is that what we need for energy purposes because methane is burning. Natural gas is typically consisting of 97 to 99% methane, with some other trace gases, but mainly is that methane, and that's what we can substitute with biogas. But what we additionally have to methane and carbon dioxide is water vapor, because the process is typically 48, 50 degrees, something like that. And therefore, water is evaporating in the system, and that's something what we have in the gas. And therefore, we have typically very much condensate in the piping systems for biogas, and then we need some technology to separate the condensate. Then we have hydrogen sulfide, because it always is sulfur as trace element contained in the substrates. And then typically we have concentrations, and that's a very wide range, between 20 and 20,000 ppm. So it's up to 2% of gas when we see these numbers here. And that depends really on how much sulfur is in the substrates. We have very much hydrogen sulfide, for example, from chicken manure or from rape seeds, pressed or squeezed rape seeds. There's a lot of sulfur inside. Then we have some nitrogen, what we have to consider. With nitrogen is coming into the process with the oxygen, what is coming in with the substrates. Yeah? And then we have some oxygen. Yeah? We cannot avoid it because we get always some oxygen into the system with the substrates. Yeah? And we have some hydrogen, is a product of the biological process. Also typically not avoidable, yeah, but not very much. Yeah. Less than 1% typically, and some trace components too, yeah, which depend then on the substrates. So finally, we define with the substrates we use the composition of the biogas. That's very clear related and can be finally also calculated. And then I would come after a break, what I would do soon, to the questions, which kinds of substrates can we convert and how can we calculate the amount of bio.
I will resume the recording. So, yeah. So there are some question in the chat. I think one of the question is already answered. The optimum solid loading rating. You have already showed it in the slide. And there is one question still about the IPCC model. This is out of the scope of this webinar. We will have another webinar on the climate, like methane calculation and GHG calculation and LCA. So we'll talk about the modeling more on that webinar. The other question is, do these conditions refer to the wet AD technology, or are they also valid for semi-dry and dry system? Or should different condition be applied for these cases?
So yeah, that's something what I can say something about it. And I would say the conditions are always the same. Yeah, also for so-called semi-dry or dry digestion. Yeah, we need water, we need temperature. We have the same questions about inhibitors in the process, and it's the same. Although the substrate or the water concentration in the process is lower. But still the microorganisms need water, and these processes are a bit an optimization regarding the necessary fermenter value and an optimization regarding the retention time, to secure a dedicated retention time. That is easier with higher solids digestion, and I like more the name high solids digestion than dry digestion, because dry digestion is not possible. Yeah? So when we really have dry conditions, nothing will happen. Yeah? And that's a bit of a strange name, I would say, for that. Yeah?
So we saw that for the condition, one of the condition was more than 50% moisture. So that is for all type of the systems.
Yes, and 50% moisture is just quite dry material. Yeah. So when you, I don't know if people from you come from agriculture, because one silage question I have seen, if you have a typical silage, you have 70% water inside, although you have pieces of material in your hands, yeah? And there's no water visible.
Yeah. Coming to the silage question, would you explain a bit about silage and also substrate? Is it possible to mix different substrate? What is silage and what is the use? And also about the substrates in general. Could we mix, for example, source separated organic waste with manure or with different stuff?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I like it. I like this question very much. Yeah, because I start with the question of silage. Yeah, silage is always a substrate when you have an agriculture where you don't need all your agricultural area for production of food. Yeah, if you have an available agricultural area where you can produce biomass just for the purpose of the biogas plant. Yeah. Then it's a very good option and it's very easily digestible. Yeah. And when you come to Germany, you see that everywhere. I would estimate out of these 10,000 biogas plants we have, 8 or 9,000 are using silage as substrate. Yeah. Because silage is here used as cow fodder, as feed for cows, typically. Yeah. And it's can be easily stored, yeah, because so you can make a biomass harvest available all the year through. Yeah, and that has a very good advantage for a biogas plant because then you can have all the year through substrate for your biogas plant. Yeah. When we come close to the equator, yeah, then it's probably not that question because you can harvest all year round, but that's only a very small piece of the world. Yeah. And what you have to have in mind that it's quite costly to produce biomass only for the purpose of biogas production. Yeah. And that's finally an economical question. Yeah. Does it make sense to produce biomethane or biogas from silage as substrate because you have to pay the silage? Yeah. And if you earn enough money from the energy you sell, then you can do that. And then it makes sense. But it should not be in conflict with food production. And that's the challenge why silages are often discussed very, very critical. And that's probably the answer on your question, I hope. And there are trials also with producing silage from separately collected organic waste from households. Yeah? That includes also garden and horticulture wastes from cities. Yeah? That's possible. You can produce a grass silage, for example. Yeah? And that works quite well. What is very important that you have enough material in a very short time to make the silage because the ensilaging process, yeah, is an acidification. It is organic acid produced, yeah? And this organic acid reduces the pH value to pH 4, something like that, and protects from further degradation. But that happens only when you have a airtight cover around the silage, and therefore you have to put it in a very short time into this under this cover.
Okay,
And
so
yeah.
in short, silage is different kind of crops like maize or grass that are harvested and then they are stored for a short period of time and then they are feed into the biogas plant.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
And during the storage, it should be also completely anaerobic or how?
Yes. Yes. Okay. Otherwise, you will have a composting process and you will have a loss of substrate. Yeah? But if you have a proper silage, you can store it for a year or two. Yeah? So that's a very good storage possibility for biomass.
And about the substrate, you mentioned that there is a possibility to mix different kind of substrate, for example, the organic source separated organic waste from cities such as horticulture and mix it with other substrate to create a proper substrate.
That typically makes very, very much sense, and but it depends sometimes on the governmental regulation. So in Germany, we do not do that because we have different definitions for waste and for organic fertilizers. And as long as we have waste, we have to make it much paperwork, to have much more analysis for heavy metals, for example, than we only have for agricultural residues like manure. Yeah? And the plants do need a totally different permit for plant operation. Yeah? And therefore, we have that not mixed. When I look into Scandinavia, for example, yeah, there everything is allowed, and it works very, very well to have a mix of organic wastes, of municipal waste, industrial waste, and manure, for example. Yeah? And it works. Technically, it's perfect when you can mix everything. So it's finally, for me, it's only a governmental or a question by the rules which are defined in the country
Legislation.
where you are active. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. I think we can have right now 5 minutes of break. I will put also in the chat a link for the form that please you have to fill it so that I have the list of the people who take part in the online training, and then I can share with them the recording. So if you want the recording, please fill out the link that I am sending in the chat. So it's now 4:06, like 6 minutes after 4. We will be back by 4:12 at the latest. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, the slide also you will have. Welcome back.
So then I will proceed. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Good. I hope you have recreated a bit from the flood of information what I gave you. Yeah. And it will proceed, unfortunately. Yeah. I hope you have it quite comfortable. Yes, now it's a question, what kind of biomass can really be used and what percentage of biomass will be converted finally into biogas? Yeah. And there's a very long list, more or less an unlimited list of possible substrates which can be used, starting with the organic fraction from municipal solid waste, or source separated municipal bio waste, industrial wastes, sewage sludge, it's very common. Commercial wastes from food industry, for example, almost every food industry has wastes which can be used for biogas production. Yeah. Then it's a lot of animal byproducts. It's manure, it's straw, it's bedding from the cows, everything coming out of that. Then it's vegetable byproducts. So it's things what are leftovers from processing food. For example, and finally, last not least, I would say, energy crops. Energy crops are used for a very large extent in Germany, and they can be used, especially when they are ensilaged. They can be used just to fill gaps when there's not enough other organic material available, that you have a continuous production of biogas in your plant. That's just a short overview, with some pictures, how it could look like. And one example here you see more or less wood waste. Wood waste is not possible. So the anaerobic microorganisms are not able to eat wood. So also wood chips are not possible to be converted. That's a limitation. And when I'm having a look on the mass balance, what happens in the process? So when I'm looking on the input on the left-hand side here, in all substrates, and here we can take source-separated organics, for example. In all substrates, the main part is water, although you don't see it often. It's water. And then we have some degradable organics. Then we have non-degradable organics like wood, for example. And we have minerals. And when you want to analyze that, you can dry your material in an oven at 105 degrees, for example, until you have a constant weight. Then you can evaporate the water. And from the weight difference in your oven, you can measure how much water was inside. And then you can put the rest of the material into an oven at, I'm not really sure, 700 degrees, something like that. Then you will make ash out of that, and you get information what is the share of minerals in your substrate. And the difference between is then the organics, and that's partly degradable and partly non-degradable organics in the material. And only the light green here, only from the light green, the microorganisms in the biogas process can produce the biogas. They consume some few of the water also, but mainly the light green degradable organics. And then you will find all what is not converted to biogas finally in the digestate. So you have not a very large difference between your input and your digestate when you see it as amount of cubic meters per year, for example. So it can be that, and that's dependent mainly on the water concentration and the share of degradable organics. With the biogas, you can have loss between 10 and 25% of your substrate, and then you have 75 to 90% digestate compared with your input. And that is something what needs also some logistics, some storage. What must be considered from you when you are an engineer, when you want to build a plant, you have to consider that this digestate will appear. And then you need to know the rules. How can you use the digestate, for example, as fertilizer? And when I'm looking into the German system, for example, we need a very long time storage for the digestate. There are governmental rules that you have to store the digestate between 6 and 9 months. And that can be a lot of tank capacity, what you have to build only to be in line with the governmental rules. So then have a look on the degradability, and what is easily degradable is on the upper side, and what is more or less not degradable is the lignin in the wood. And that's the order of degradability of the substrates from the carbohydrates, sugars, more or less, fats, proteins, and then it's coming hemicellulose and cellulose. That's not that easy degradable. That takes more time. And lignin finally is not degradable. And then we have lists, and you have not to read through everything here for sure. But it's only as you can take it as a storage for you for the future, for example. Typically, we have such tables where we can see the typical percentage of fresh matter, dry matter in the substrates, what we have here. The organic, the volatile solids, the organic dry matter as percentage of the dry matter. And then we have out of these tables, we can see what is the specific biogas yield from the substrate in liter biogas per kilogram organic or volatile solids, organic dry matter. And with these tables, you can calculate how much biogas can you expect from a number of given substrate. And we have a typical methane concentration in this biogas. And then you can also calculate a number, what is the typical biogas yield, cubic meter biogas per ton of input material, or as only methane yield, when it's only, when you only want to know how much energy you can produce. You can find such tables everywhere on the internet or in books. That's only an example what you can use also later if you want to have a rough number of a biogas production from a number of substrate. And there are some specific questions around municipal solid waste, because just related to municipal solid waste, we cannot easily take a number out of a table, because it's very, very dependent on especially the percentage of the organic fraction in the waste. And that is when I see that worldwide, we have very, very different numbers on organic fraction of the waste. Sometimes people have some composting close to their houses, then we have very few amounts of organic fraction in the waste. Sometimes they are living in the center of the town, and they would put everything what is organic into their waste bin. Then the percentage is quite large. And then we have some seasonality, that depends a bit on the climate where you are located. When I see that for Middle Europe, then we have a very strange differences between winter and summer. Summer, when the people are in the garden and produce their own vegetables, and winter when there's nothing growing. Or you have very dry and rainy seasons. There you have very clear differences. Also differences in quality, not only in amount, but also in quality of the waste what you collect. And then it's also always changing composition of the organic fraction. Sometimes it's much wood, inside, or from gardening material. Sometimes it's only food waste. And then it's also changing water concentrations and some other disturbing components. What you have to consider when you are making a plan for a digestion plant for organic waste. That's something what I only wanted to put your attendance on here. And now I will make a small calculation example with you that you get an idea how to calculate how much biogas can I produce from a dedicated amount of substrate. And I take two examples, one organic waste example and one cattle manure example. And I take quite large numbers, just for a larger town, I would say, with 500,000 inhabitants. Then you can expect around 550,000 tons per source separated organic waste. When I'm just looking to Germany, it's like close to Leipzig, or Dresden. These towns, they will have such an amount of organic waste. And then as second example, I have cattle manure, where I take 10,000 tons per year. That's not so much. That's from, for example, 500 cattle at one stable or one location. So it's much less. And then we have different number of fresh matter concentration. So in organic waste, that's only an assumption. It will be locally different, but just for a calculation, we have 40% fresh matter, and the volatile solids, so the organic dry matter, is 50% of the solids. And so we can calculate that we get out of 50,000 tons per year waste volume 20,000 tons dry matter, and half of that is organic dry matter, what can be converted to biogas. So out of the 50,000 tons, only 10,000 tons can be converted to biogas. And practically, it will always be less because no process is perfect. And regarding the cattle manure, we have less dry matter concentration. It's only 25%, but a higher share of organic dry matter. But in total, that means out of the 10,000 tons, we have 2,000 tons organic dry matter, what could be converted into biogas. So when we process that, we could have out of the table, what I just showed, a specific biogas yield, what we can calculate with. And that is higher from organic waste than from cattle manure. And that has a good reason, because in organic waste, you find a lot of fresh organic material. And what is easily degradable. And when you take some cattle manure in hand, this black material has been processed by a cow, and then it's some straw inside. Everything is not that easy degradable, and therefore the specific biogas yield is much lower for cattle manure. And then we have a typical methane concentration out of this material, and out of that we can calculate the methane yield. So we have these 10,000 tons organic matter per year. Multiply that with 615 liter per kilogram or cubic meter per ton of volatile solids, and multiply that with 60% methane concentration. And then we come to this number here, 3.7 million cubic meter methane per year. And out of the cattle manure, because we have much less organic matter and much less specific biogas yield and less methane concentration, we only have 500,000 cubic meter methane per year. And then there are typically some losses in the process, which we calculate typically with 1 to 1.5%. That must be also considered. Then we result in these numbers here on the right-hand side. And then we have to think about what will we do with that. Typically, you don't sell the methane. It's also possible, yeah. But typically, you need some energy, and that can be electricity, that can be heat, or it can be gas to substitute natural gas. Yeah. And that's what I put it here in the lower lines. Yeah. So we have in these gas amounts here energy yield, lower heating value, what is seen here as megawatt hours per year total. So here we have that's around factor 10. Yeah? Factor 9.97 is the correct factor. Then we have 36,000 megawatt hours, yeah, out of the organic waste, or around 5,000 megawatt hours out of the cattle manure. And when we produce electricity, we have typically 40% efficiency. Yeah? Then we can have here 14.5 thousand megawatt hours electricity, or only 2,000 megawatt hours electricity in the cattle manure case. Yeah? And when we produce electricity, typically we produce electricity and heat. So there's in a motor, the biogas is processed in the motor. I'll come to that later. There's always some waste heat. And then we have around the same numbers of heat, what we produce. And then the question, can we use the heat, yeah, especially under your conditions in your countries, the main participants here. It's a challenge, yeah. What should we do with the heat? Because it's hot anyway, at least 8 months a year, yeah. And then we have to think about that, yeah. And then it's a question, and only as example, yeah, as example, I took a value here on the electricity of 20 euro cent per kilowatt hour, and the heat 4 euro cent per kilowatt hour, so that we could earn out of selling this energy here around 3 million euro per year. Yeah. And this 3 million euro per year must be used to pay the operation and the investment of the plant when we process the material here. And in the cattle manure case, it's only 400,000 euros per year. Yeah. What we have here, and if we sell the gas, yeah, to substitute natural gas, what is possible when you have, for example, a gas grid where you could inject the gas into the gas grid, then it's around the same numbers. Yeah? And finally, the final economy depends on these individual numbers here. The 20 cent or the 4 cent for heat, 20 cent for electricity, or 8 cent for the gas, what you sell. Yeah, and then you need an optimization. What can we sell at that location? And it's depending on the location out of the energy we have produced here. So that was now quite fast, and I would open the floor if you have some questions to that. And I see there are some few questions in the slide, in the chat here.
Yeah, it's more of a comment. I will start by the first question, like also elaboration. So the total solid based on the fresh material, volatile solid, and also information like a specific biogas yield, methane yield, and lower heating value. These we can find in the resources in the internet. So
yes,
that is for clarification that in each of these slides, yeah.
Or you find it in this table here. You will have that available, but such tables you find on the internet, yes.
And do you suggest any specific source that has a better, like, international? I would say that I know that there is in Germany very good database for German specific, but for the other part of the world, is there any data set or any source that people can look into it?
Very good question. I am not aware of that because I only use the German ones. Yeah? And I cannot suggest international good site where or good web page where you can look for that.
Other possibility is to do a sampling and check it in the lab to see how much is the volatile solid and organic waste and so on.
Yes. Yeah, but you need a lab what is possible, what is able to produce these numbers. In Central Europe, it's very easy to find laboratories. I know in some other countries there are not so many laboratories which are specialized on that. Yes, but it's also an option just for the case that you have some industrial substrate what is not really fitting in such a table here. Yeah? Then it's probably the best to check the biogas potential of this individual substrate in the laboratory. And I know that also people from some other countries are sending their samples to laboratories in Europe or in Sweden. Yeah.
To check the potential.
Yes.
Okay, we have now two questions. One is regarding adding biochar to the digestate, to the substrate, if it will affect the amount of biogas. The other one is the uncertainty in the substrate, like diversity on days, season, and festivals.
Yeah. There's some research going on also at Rostock University to use biochar as an additive to enhance the biogas production, and there are some quite positive results on that, which show that you can get a faster or higher biogas yield. But then it's a question about the cost of the biochar. Yeah, what you should have in mind, and the relation, how much more biogas or energy can you expect from your process, and then must be, finally economically feasible. Yeah, but it's an option to enhance the process. Yeah, I would say yes. Yeah.
About the uncertainty on the substrate, like if we consider to have source separated organic waste, as you mentioned, there will be differences between season and days, and then it will affect the capacity of our plant. How can we approach this problem?
Yes, yeah. So that's a very practical problem, what is very typical everywhere. And how we treat it in practice is that with the owner of the plant, we make a calculation how much material will we have available in each of the months of the year, or also on some very special occasions, some festival, how you write it here. And then we have to make assumption that the plant will not be able to take up all material over the whole year, because then we would build it too large. And then we say, okay, we try to convert every time 80% of all substrate what is available, and then the plant it will be a bit smaller. And the second question is then, can we take the material what we cannot process at these days or this month where it is waste? Can we store it for a longer period? For example, can we ensilage the organic waste? That's some practical research what is done into that direction also in Germany. And then it's possible probably to move with substrate feeding from, I would say, from autumn into winter. And then it could work. Or do we have some alternative plant what has some additional capacity where we can transport it these 2 months or these 2 weeks where we have too much substrate? So we design the plant typically not for the maximum amount what could occur. That's probably a good answer on this question. Why do we suggest storing for 9 months? The idea behind that is that we must fertilize the crops at the time where the nutrients are really taken up by the crops. So it's some optimization of farming. And the government has decided to be on the safe side. Industrial biogas plants which have no own land, they have to store for 9 months, because then we can be sure that the digestate is only used as fertilizer when there are really crops growing on the fields. And in Germany, we have the challenge that there are between 4 and 5 months where it's so cold that the crops on the agricultural area are not growing, so that they don't take up the nutrients. And we save the groundwater from too much nitrogen with this strategy. And that's in every country very different for sure. But that's the idea behind the 9 months.
So it's not the reason is not to stabilize or like that the material which is composted becoming so completely mature. It's more of the agriculture strategy, cultivation strategy.
Yes, it's only based on that. Yes. Yeah. So then we have practical strategies to control the CN ratio. Yeah, the CN ratio, that's the planning of substrate feeding. Yeah, that's very simple when you only have manure and some agricultural substrates, what you always get through the year, like silage, something like that. That's quite complicated when you are working with waste, yeah, because you never know what type of waste will come tomorrow. Yeah. So the one side is planning and management of substrate intake into the plant, and substrate feeding, and the second is to analyze your CN ratio regularly. And if the CN ratio is wrong, then you have to add, for example, straw with much carbon inside, or some other materials with much nitrogen inside. And regarding volatile fatty acids accumulation, it's typically regular analysis of the plant. So many plants do a monthly analysis to measure the organic acids, and some have also some equipment on site that they are able to measure within some hours. And know their values and can optimize the system, and typically reduce feeding when the acids are too high concentrations. And standard sampling strategies, that's what I mean more or less with monthly sampling. And you always take the samples out of the outflow of a digester. And then, you take a liter, something like that, and send it into the lab.
I think this question was mainly on if there's in a country there is no lab, or if there is a lab, if they want to take a sample to estimate the potential of the biogas and methane production. Is there any like standard sampling for the substrate?
Yeah, there are standards. Yeah, there are some standard rules. Also in Germany, it's VDI rules. Yeah, there you can read that through. But there's also from the German Biomass Research Center, DBFZ. They have also published standards on sampling and measuring methods. Yeah? And they are free available on their homepage. Yeah? I can probably write shortly here the homepage. There you can find this material, hopefully also in English. And that's when you want to take samples, you always have to have a mix of samples. So if you have a very unequally distributed material, you should take at 5 sampling points, probably also at 2 or 3 different days samples, and mix them together then, and finally have a small mixed sample out of all this material that you have a bit more as representative as possible sample. Yeah, that's probably what I can say about it. But there's very good material on that available.
Thank you. And the other question, I'm not sure if it's relevant to our case, like the lining layers for effective oxidation. I'm not sure, is it means in the digester itself, in the fermenter itself, or?
I would assume it is relevant for landfills.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, because in a digester, sag mal, I would say industrial biogas plant, there should not take place any methane slip, and so we don't need oxidation of the methane. Yeah? And in landfills, there's a lot of research done how to design these oxidation windows, how they are called. Yeah? But that's something what I cannot tell very much about.
Yeah. But maybe a relevant question here is you mentioned about sulfur combination that is creating in the biogas, and it is corrosive, and how to protect the digester from the corrosion of this gas during the process.
Okay, yeah, that can be. So that's very important question, because you build a digester for operation of 20 years or longer, and we have seen a lot of examples where, for example, the concrete was washed out from the acids, because there was not good cover on, and typically you can take some protective painting on that, some type of plastic painting, some very special paints are used for that. But often we also see really plastic shield covers or layers, which protect the concrete in the areas where there is the biogas, as far as the substrate is always on the concrete, so the liquid, under the liquid surface, there will not take place some corrosion. It's only where we have some few amount of oxygen in the gas phase. And there we really need to have a careful protection of the materials against corrosion.
Thank you. I think not any more question in the chat.
No, the comment, Julian, thank you very much for that. It's clear just that we need cold, and we can produce with adsorption technology cold out of heat. That's something what we also do here in Germany at some few places. Unfortunately, only few, but that's a good option to use the excess heat what is produced during electricity production. Yeah. Okay. Then I would proceed with the technological process. What you see here, and I will go through the process from the beginning to the end, more or less. So I would start with substrate storage, because typically substrate is not available 24/7, all time through. It needs at least some intermediate storage on the biogas plant, and it can be like municipal organic waste here on the upper left side, that there is an area where trucks can be unloaded, and from there it can be some continuous feeding. What takes place here on the right-hand side here, you see a feeder, automatic feeder, what will be filled here, that's the green one. This will be filled once or twice a day. And from this feeder, it will be automatic feeding through pipe systems into these digesters, what you see here on the left-hand side and the right-hand side, sorry. Or it can be a liquid tank, like in the picture on the lower side on the left. A tank for liquid materials, liquid organics, where it can be collected, it can be manured, it can also be some wastewaters from industry, some fats, for example, are possible. And then it can be continuously, every day, every hour, every second hour, feeded into the digester, what is seen here on the left-hand side. And this can be also under the concrete, as in the picture here on the right lower side, that trucks can be drive over the surface, and here is a liquid tank, a tank for liquids below the surface. That's important just to realize that we have a continuous feeding for the process, for the biological process. Then, yeah, you see these pathways also in these pictures here a bit, that we have a feeding or a mix of a liquid feeding here from a tank and from solids that will be fed into a piping systems, what is pressed into the digester, then into a first digester, or solids are coming here from the right to the left now, through a so-called pre-digester, where is solid material mixed into a liquid in a tank, and then feeded by pumps typically into the digester. And yeah, sometimes it's coming underground, as in the picture, in the upper picture, or it's coming over the surface, like here. There's a solid material feeded into a feeder, and then there are screws transporting the material over the surface, and then it's coming from upside into the digester, or the digester is under the earth, and then it can be directly fed from upstairs into the digester. Some different methods, and on the right-hand side, you see some pictures here in the upper side. A solid material feeded here, and we have a screw inside here, what is going directly into the digester, what is behind the feeding here. And here in the lower part, you see a system of screws, which are transporting the material here upstairs and then downstairs again into this digester. Then we have the different processes, and here you see also the name dry process, although it's not the name how I like it. So then we have the differentiation between discontinuous and continuous processes. And in the discontinuous process, the material is brought into a digester, what is here like a garage, I would say. Garage type, there's the opening, and the substrate can be fed in with a wheel loader into that, put it on a heap here, so that it's laying inside, nothing is moving there, but and it is called dry process, but a liquid is like in a shower, giving over the material, and is collected on the bottom again, and then it's circulated, the liquid here in this process. It's quite inefficient, so it's sometimes it has the lowest investment cost, but the distribution of the process in this material here is very inhomogeneous. And therefore, when you want to have the highest biogas yield, it is, from my point of view, not the technology of choice, because it's a process what you cannot really control, and it will be different in all different parts of this garage here. So then we have the continuous processes, what I would always have in favor. And the continuous processes are also distributed into so-called dry processes with high dry matter concentrations, and in processes with very low dry matter concentration. And with high dry matter concentration, we need very strong mixers, where the material, for example, in this plug flow fermenter that looks from outside, a bit like this here in the top, so that's long tubes laying here, and then the material is fed into one side, and then it's only mixed vertically here, but not horizontal. And due to the very high solids concentration, there is no mixing on the length of the digester. And so it's quite well controlled that a piece of substrate has a defined retention time in the process here. That it comes in here, and for example, 20 days later it comes out here, and then it has really a retention time of 20 days. And when the process is getting wetter, less dry matter concentration, then it's possible to mix it totally, like in a mixer when you are preparing a smoothie or something like that. And then the material is coming in on the one side, leaving on the other side, but in between it's totally mixed here. And that's very liquid. And there are very many different technologies available, what I will not speak about in detail today. Yes, but only giving you an insight and an overview, what are the technologies, what we have. And now some pictures, just that you can see how it looks like. And biogas plant can be a lagoon, what we have seen often in South America, where we have a gas-tight cover on the ground. And here it's more or less digged into the ground and sealed with some foils or with concrete. There are different options. And then there are mixers inside. Then we have this plug flow fermenter, like you have seen also earlier, where the material is fed on one side, taken out on the other side. Then it's digesters which are optimized for hydraulic mixing, what you see only in sewage sludge plant, in wastewater treatment plants. And this is very, very special form, like an egg. So you have no dead zones of mixing, what you always have in these other fermenters. The typical system, what you would see in Germany, is a complete steer tank reactor, where we have mixers inside, and you have a tank where the material is continuously fed, more or less every day or every hour. And then it's a garage type, what you have seen on the picture before. That's the typical types of fermenters, what you could see. I would say worldwide, except the very small ones, which could like these ones here, which are digged into the earth, what you can find in many countries in Africa. But that's, I would say, family-sized biogas plants, where it's produced, for example, the cooking gas, instead of using firewood for cooking. So not at industrial scale, but it's also working. But it's only working in very hot climates, because the process, what you have learned earlier, the process needs some temperature to have a good running process, 30 degrees, more than 30 degrees, what you hardly can realize in these systems here. And when we are coming to a climate zone which is colder in winter, then these plants will not work in winter. Just only that I showed you that these plant types also exist. And here are some options how to mix the process. And it's not only mixers inside, and I start on the bottom here. There is these plug flow fermenters which can be mixed with some kind of pedals on an axis or a transversal axis here in the right-hand side, or with very large wings from outside. Now it can be from outside or from the upper surface coming into the fermenter. Very typical are these long axis and propeller mixers, what you see here in these central pictures. And the so-called Danish type, what we also have in Germany, many from is this central axial stirred mixers, where we have the motor on the roof, and the long axis with propellers on side, and having a good circulation here in the whole fermenter. And then there are some special technologies which are more or less only working when you have very liquid material in your fermenter. That's a so-called mammoth pump, which is pumping through a pipe, the material, what is then mixed here, or with mixing with gas bubbles. Yeah, then you really need very liquid material or a gas mixer, yeah, where it's also used the effect when the gas is coming centrally in here, taking the substrate with up, and then it's mixed in a circle. And you can also use a pump outside. Yeah, then you have no mixers inside. It's good for maintenance. Yeah. And you can also mix the digester inside. That's a lot of options how you can do that. Yeah. And yeah, that's I think only some pictures coming, which will add some views. I will skip these pictures. Yeah, and that's only because we are speaking mainly on municipal solid waste here in this workshop series. Therefore, I give you some insight into a plug flow digester, yeah, where there's such an axis here. It's 0.5 meter diameter around, yeah. So it must be very, very strong, yeah, that these materials or also these stivers survive in the very hard conditions in the biogas plant. Yeah, so you see very strong motors here and to operate with, and here are then the pedals mounted, which mix the material. And here we have a look into a screw transportation system, which transports the material here into a digester. Yes, that's the same more or less, and I would skip these. Yeah. So everything is possible in large scale. So we have a very large scale garage type fermenter system here, and some of these we find in Germany, where here you see the door where the material is brought in. And then we need, and that's a challenge at these systems, we need a door what is really keeping the digester close and that no oxygen can come in and no gases can come out. And that's a challenge because sometimes the wheel loader is driving against the wall here and then you need to repair it. But you see here, you have then a lot of doors, door by door. Yeah, it's here, I assume it's 8. Yeah. And then it's one filled and the other ones are under digestion process. And if the digestion process ends in one of the others, then they take the material out and fill it with new material. That's the way how these systems are worked. And from now on, we would come to the options how to use the biogas. And I would just make a short break of 5 minutes at that point, but allow before some questions what I would like to answer if you have some.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I see 2 questions. One is also, I'm not sure if it's again relevant or it's about again landfill. What is the best biofilter? Actually, yes, can be used instead of flaring, but flaring is not an option in biogas plant, but biofilter still, maybe you can say some words about the biofilter in the biological treatment facilities.
Yeah. So, I think there is no biofilter what could be better as any flaring. Yeah, in the biogas plants I am speaking about, this industrial type here, is flaring just a security option because in the case that biogas is produced but biogas is not used, we need to oxidize it. That we avoid giving methane into the atmosphere. Yeah. And therefore, we need also a flare on the biogas plant. But regarding best biofilter, so on the industrial biogas plants, we will never have biofilters for methane because the methane biofilter needs very continuous operation and a very continuous gas flow. And when we have a flare in the biogas plant or an accident where we have to flare the biogas, the biofilter would not work because the biogas would only be available for 2 days or whatever until some maintenance has taken place that the gas can be used again. And therefore, biofilters are no option, and I cannot tell you much about that. odor while storage. Yeah. You mean the storage of the fresh substrates? Yeah. That's a very good question. So typically, when we speak about organic municipal waste, we have a receiving point for organic waste in a covered building, some type of hall where we have under pressure, where we suck out the air, and this air is always treated in the biofilter. Then we are at the biofilter again. So we have an unloading of the trucks, typically in a building, where we have negative pressure, and the air from that tipping point where the trucks are unloaded is going over a biofilter into the atmosphere. So you have the odor in that room. That's not nice to work there. But through the treatment on a biofilter, you will not put the odor to your neighbors.
So the biofilter here is another concept. So it's mainly the reason for this biofilter. Its work is to control the odor, and it's usually the food chips that is on the top of the biogas plant.
That's
Like like the
difficult.
biofilter that you are talking about to control odor.
Yes.
What is the simple one? What we
Okay.
see?
Yeah, that's typically some kind of container where the air is blown through, and where you have to control moisture, that you really have a reduction of odor, because it's microorganisms which consume more or less the
Mhm.
organic components of the waste air,
Mhm.
and they need, again, as everything, some moisture.
And what kind of material is usually used for such biofilters that can absorb the odor?
Yeah, typically is wood chips from the wood of the lower parts, the parts under the earth of some trees. I don't know the English name for that, but
But the
yeah,
wood chips, yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. It is 5:04. We will have 5 to 6 minutes break. We'll be back on 5:10, 10 minutes after the 5. I repeat, please fill out the form if you want to receive the recording and the slides. There is right now 80 people online, and I received from 50 people the response. So yeah, you can find it in the chat. I will put it again in the chat. And yeah, see you in 5 minutes. Thank you.
Allow me just to urge our students to register. Please, everybody, try to fill the form. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Dr. Hani.
Thank you, Dr. Hani.
So I think we can proceed.
Yes.
Yeah, good. Okay, so now I will come to the last part, when the biogas is produced, and I tried to explain you the technology and the process until this point. Then it's the question, what should we do with the gas? And there are some options. I mentioned them in the beginning. One is a very typical case in most regions of the world, is just to produce electricity and heat on site of the biogas plant in typical gas engines or ignition oil engines, where we can cover a local demand of electricity and heat, or bring the electricity in the local or larger electricity grid. In the case that we don't need the heat, then it's possible to produce cold. What is also necessary in many buildings, in some industrial cases where it's used. And if no electricity is produced on site, one option is also always to produce only heat. What I don't see in the regions of most of our participants here. But one option is always to purify the gas, to upgrade it to natural gas quality. That means to take out the carbon dioxide and use it as a fuel, or to inject into a natural gas grid. What happens also I can only estimate 3,000 places in the whole world at the moment, and that's also a typical way how to use the biogas. And I will explain some of these pathways a bit more in detail. Here you see composition of the composition of biogas and biomethane. And biomethane means the biogas what is upgraded to natural gas quality. And in the biogas, we have a lot of methane, clearly. In the gas grid, we have, that's more or less, that's the limits. That's the limits what we see here, not a composition. That's the limits when we want to inject the gas into the natural gas grid. And for methane, it's clearly no limitation. But for carbon dioxide, we must reduce the concentration to lower than 6%. The nitrogen must be down typically to 1%. The oxygen must be down to 0.5%, something like that. Hydrogen sulfide must be reduced very, very strong, from typically 1 or few thousands milligrams per cubic meter to 6. And then we have also some other components, siloxanes, hydrocarbons, water, what must be adapted and reduced. And then we have a difference of the calorific value of the gas. In raw biogas, it's 5 to 7 kilowatt hour per cubic meter, and in natural gas, we are much higher due to the fact that there's no carbon dioxide inside. And the same with the so-called Vogel index, what is a parameter of gas quality in natural gas grids. Just to have a comparison where we have to go through, and therefore we need some technologies. And the first point is always drying of the biogas, because we have to protect all aggregates against corrosion. That's because the biogas is saturated with water vapor and coming out with 40 degrees, 83 degrees, something like that, 38 degrees, sorry, 48 degrees out of the digesters. And that's the drying can be done by cooling of the gas. And then we get condensate and can separate the water from the gas. Typically done with electrical cooling, but sometimes also with adsorption possible. That's a very important step. And the second is to get the H2S out of the gas with some so-called desulfurization. There are many possibilities to do that. It can be done with use of microorganisms in the digester. There we need to add some few amount of oxygen into the gas phase of the digester, not into the liquid phase, into the gas phase. And then there are microorganisms which convert H2S into sulfur. And then we see everything gets yellow in the digester. But that can be also done like in the photo here in some external tanks, so-called bioscrubbers. We can also do it on chemical pathways, or do it finally with activated carbon when we let the gas flow through activated carbon, and then the H2S is bound to the activated carbon, but it is the most expensive solution typically. And often it's used a combination of different technologies here. And yes, I just told you when we don't want to produce on-site electricity, we need the desulfurization and the drying. That's always necessary, just to protect the engines. But when we want to go into the gas grid, we need further steps to get out the components what you have just seen in the table. And finally, we need also some compression because the gas must come with higher pressure than the gas in the gas grid. Otherwise, it will not flow into the gas grid. And therefore, we typically need compression because out of the digester, we get the gas at more or less zero pressure. In the gas grid, we have typically 4 bars, 6 bars, 16 bars, something like that pressure. And therefore, we have to compress the gas when we want to go that pathway. And there are many different technologies available for carbon dioxide removal. I cannot go into all details today, but they are everywhere visible on the world. What came up through the last years and is, I think, the most important technology at the moment is a separation by membranes, where the effect is used that the methane molecules have a different size compared with the carbon dioxide molecule. And like in a sieve, you can separate both types of molecules. Only the holes must be very, very small. But it's quite well working method. But there are also chemical and physical methods. For example, a water bottle here. When you shake it, then you see the carbon dioxide inside. And when you open it, the pressure comes out. And that's the same effect what is used, for example, in the water scrubber, where under pressure, the biogas is giving into the water scrubber. The carbon dioxide is solved in the water. And when you take the water out and decompress the water, then the carbon dioxide comes out, but in a second column, for example. So you can separate both gases. Some pictures on that. Here we have a water scrubber, what is 12 meters high, something like that, 13 meters high. Columns here where the biogas is treated, and also the other both are water scrubbers. And here you see the so-called membranes. There's here we have very, very thin tubes where there are the small holes inside and where the gas is pressed through with some pressure clearly. And then we have in a plant a lot of these membrane modules. That's all these modules where you see the violet picture here on. And inside you find these small spaghetti, we could say, but with holes inside. And that's from outside, it only looks like a container. You never know what is inside here. So it's a quite practical solution also for transport the technology to the place of the biogas plant. And when we have upgraded the gas to natural gas quality, the easiest way is to bring to transport it through the gas grid if a gas grid is available, and that's not everywhere the case. Yeah? And where that's not the case, it's possible also to transport the gas by trucks to, for example, fueling stations or to customers which want to use the gas. Or another option is also to have a local fueling station, but then you need vehicles which run on CNG, compressed natural gas, and that's very different in different countries of the world. So we have many CNG cars in South America, for example, in Central America. We have many in Italy, and we have not that many in many other regions of the world. And that's something what you have to check, but it could, for example, make sense when you have a waste management plant with biogas production to make a cooperation with the local bus transport. And then the bus transport can be fueled. Then CNG buses are necessary, clearly. The bus transport can be fueled with the biogas what you have. And there we have very good examples from Sweden, where there are towns which don't have a gas grid, but where most of the public transport is dependent on CNG and the locally produced biogas. That's examples how to use it. From that point, I will come to give you a short overview about economy, because that's always a crucial point. And when you are working as engineers in the future, then you have to make some feasibility calculations. Is it feasible to invest into a biogas plant or not? You will be asked for that, and then you have to make some calculations on that. I don't have very much time today to spend on this topic, but I can only give you a short overview, how you can make such a comparison. And when I take an example of biogas upgrading to natural gas quality here. Typically, with investment and operation and supply of substrates, you have typical costs, and everything here on the screen is in euro cent per kilowatt hour. Typical cost for the production of biogas, and then you have the raw biogas with carbon dioxide and methane inside. The cost is between 3 and 5 euros per kilowatt hour. To make it usable, you have to upgrade it to natural gas quality. And then investment and operation, electricity demand, everything what is necessary will cost between 1.5 and 2 euros per kilowatt hour, depending on the size of the plant. So in total, you have something between 4.5 to 7 euros per kilowatt hour production cost. And then you have the final use. The final use, for example, when you produce electricity and heat, with only one example, you have then in the CHP unit, you get for the electricity 21 euro cent per kilowatt hour paid and 6 cents for the heat. That makes, based on the efficiencies of the heat and power plant, CHP unit, that you can pay for the gas, what you are using here, 7.5 euro cent per kilowatt hour. So that's a bit more than your production cost can be. And it's a question, what cost do you have by bringing the biomethane from the production to the final use? When you use the gas grid, it could be connected with cost, must not necessarily. And there's another option when you use it as vehicle fuel. Then you can sell the gas as fuel at filling stations. And when we are sticking to Europe, then there's an incentive to use alternative fuels in vehicles, and there are so-called greenhouse gas emission quota credits, and they are paying a lot of the fuel. There's some trading with that, and therefore you could use, when you use biomethane as a fuel in Central Europe, you could often earn more money from selling it as fuel than for selling it as gas for electricity production, for example. And then you could achieve 8.5 euro cent per kilowatt hour. Yeah, it's also more than your production cost, and so you could get the plant running feasible. I hope this was a bit understandable. Yeah, that's I think always a challenge to follow if you are not that deep in the processes. What is not considered here is there's a digestate, the nutrients in the digestate. They have a value, and also that depends on your local conditions. Do the farmers see your digestate as a value or not? And that's something what must be discussed. And there are regions in the world where you can sell the digestate and earn money, and other regions in the world where you have to pay for getting rid of the digestate. And that's something what you have to identify at your local situation. That's very important, because just speaking about additional valuable products, and that's the digestate. I just said it, yeah. But it's also the carbon dioxide, and that's getting more and more important. Yeah? When we have separated carbon dioxide from biogas upgrading, we have it typically in a very good quality. This can be very good used as product for food industries, yeah? Or for production of methane from hydrogen, yeah? With renewable electricity. Yeah? So that's more and more asked for, what we see in the industry, and therefore it makes sense to think also locally about, can we use the carbon dioxide, and it's sometimes only used for some water, yeah, where it's in where it's mixed in, yeah, or beer or other beverages, and yeah, sometimes also for industrial purposes. So that's for the whole economy, from my point of view, very important to be considered. I would like to give the floor to some questions, if there are some, because I would switch now again the topic a bit. And I see here
one question. The difference between biogas and syngas.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's a very good question, because that's always a question of names of different gases. And biogas is always coming from a biological process. So microorganisms has produced biogas, that means methane and carbon dioxide, from organic substances which are degraded by these microorganisms. And syngas is coming from a thermochemical process. There's a thermochemical process called gasification. I don't know if you are aware of that. And there it's like a shortened incineration process. So when you heat up biomass, solid biomass, typically it's wood. When you heat up with biomass to 1100 degrees, then it will be converted into gas, and carbon will stay back. Yeah? And this gas is typically with a very different composition than biogas. There's also some methane, but only 10%, something like that. It's mainly carbon monoxide. There's a lot of hydrogen inside. Yeah? And this gas can be produced under controlled conditions in a thermochemical process. Yeah? And also this syngas can be converted in methane finally, but it needs very different technologies. So it's not covered with the name biogas for sure. Yes, a good question for carbon dioxide. So we have two customers which operate a carbon dioxide liquefaction plant here in Germany, where they produce the carbon dioxide for the food industry, in food industry quality. And yes, in the carbon dioxide, what you get from a biogas upgrading plant, you still have some few impurities, and you need a so-called polishing step to have an additional purification. So when I see that in investment terms, the carbon dioxide liquefaction plant, which does this purification finally, and liquefies the gas that it's transportable. That's also important. So it's cooled down very far. This plant does cost around the same as the biogas upgrading plant. So it's typically 1.5 to 2.5 million euro more investment. That's necessary. Otherwise, you will not fulfill the very strong quality criteria of the food industry. Okay, then we are also with the question of industry or food industry carbon dioxide utilization in the point, how can we integrate biogas installations into the overall system? And I will look first on the energy system. The typical case is what you said, is production of biogas, production of electricity and heat, and that's it. That's the typical and traditional way how to use biogas. And that what came up, but as I told you, where we have around 3,000 plants today on the market, is to upgrade the gas to natural gas quality and then use it as substitute for natural gas. And then we can use it everywhere, in industry, in households, in municipalities, wherever, just to substitute natural gas, with the option to use the typical technologies which are built to consume natural gas. Then we have also the chance to use the methane in the so-called reforming processes to produce hydrogen. And that's a bit a political question. More and more discussions are around we need hydrogen as a purest renewable energy. So it's possible, but we have to put additional energy into the process to supply hydrogen from biogas. But it's, I think, important to know that it's possible. And I would put the economy in question, because why should hydrogen be better than methane to be used in the energy system? But there's a chance to add electricity into the process, and together with electricity, it's possible. I just have to check it here. When we add electricity, we can produce hydrogen from electrolysis, and when we mix the hydrogen that can, typically it comes from electrolysis. When we mix hydrogen with biogas, then we can get through the biological process. There are some new fermenter designs necessary, but it's possible, to add hydrogen to biogas, and the carbon dioxide in the biogas will be converted to additional methane. So we could, in the best case, double the methane output from a biogas plant when we have hydrogen available. And that's a point when we look a bit into the future, where more and more hydrogen will be available. And it's an option to use with hydrogen for a good purpose. And there's a lot of research and some first demonstration units on the market. And also regarding integration, I would like to show you one last example from Germany, what is possible. So here you see, that's not so easy to understand if you never have seen it, and it's unfortunately in German. Here you see where the electricity in Germany comes from, for whole Germany, and in the course of a week. So you see every day, and that's typical in Germany, in April here, last year, every day the sun is shining, more or less, and is producing electricity based on very many solar panels in Germany. And then we have here wind power plants, and here we had some windy days, with the blue from offshore and onshore wind power, yeah, with these blue marked areas, that's wind power coming into the system, and the fossil energy is only here on the top of the system. It's gray and black. Yeah? That's coal and natural gas. Yeah? And the green here is the biomass, so electricity from biomass. Yeah? Coming here. And in Germany, we are on a pathway to supply electricity in a flexible way from biogas. Yeah? And if we would look a bit in the future, yeah, it could look like here, like these green fields here, that every day, yeah, in the times where, and I will go a bit back, yeah, in the times, especially in the night, where we have more fossil power here. That's the brown, black, and gray. Yeah? When we have more fossil powers, just in the nights, we will be able to increase the energy supply, electricity supply from biomass. Yeah? And with that, we can decrease the need for fossil power. Yeah? But for that, it's necessary to increase electrical capacity of the single biogas plants. Yeah? Because today we are producing electricity, I would say, in a line. Yeah? And if we want to produce it on the day, on the night, much more, or in the evenings and in the mornings, much more, we need additional electrical capacity for electricity production. And that is something what happens in practice in Germany. Many investments are done into that direction, but only based on governmental incentives, which are enforcing that. Yeah? And it will be possible to reduce the necessary flexible load from fossil energy to around 50%. Yeah? And that's something what is a bit looking into the future, but it's one option that biogas energy will be better integrated into the overall energy system. Just one example how to do that. And then I have one picture just to visualize, what is the effect in terms of the most important currency today. It's carbon dioxide emissions. Yeah? In terms of carbon dioxide emissions, when we substitute other fuels. And this is an example when we use biomethane as a vehicle fuel. Yeah? When we use gasoline or diesel as main fuels, yeah, where we have a greenhouse gas emissions of gram carbon dioxide per kilometer driven, yeah, in the range of 164 or 156. Or when we produce hydrogen with conventional electricity, it's also not better. That's here on the right-hand side. But when we substitute here the gas with biomethane, and this is an example here, yeah, then, and the biomethane is coming not from energy crops, it's coming from manure and residues, yeah, then we can reduce the carbon dioxide emissions compared with gasoline or diesel by almost 100%, so 97 here in this case. And then we are on the same, in the same effect, yeah, as we have it with hydrogen, when hydrogen is coming from pure renewable electricity, or when we drive with electricity from wind power. So it's about the same effect, and then we are comparable, I would say. And that's speaking, from my point of view, very much for increasing the use and production of biogas and using it as a substitution for fossil fuels. Yeah, it must not be diesel. Yeah, that's one example here, but it's the same when we substitute natural gas or oil for heating purposes, whatever. And we will never achieve that with bioethanol or biodiesel from energy crops. So they are in that range here much worse, I would say, than biomethane. Something what you could also use for political discussions, probably what you could have in future. Yeah. And when we come to the question how to operate and manage biogas plant, then there are very different options possible regarding the management. And I just want to give you a very short insight here before I come to some very practical examples of biogas production, how that can be organized. Yeah? Sometimes here in the first case, yeah, we have the substrate producers, what could be here in this example, farmers, could also be waste management. Yeah? What is only delivering substrates to a biogas producer, and he is taking care about everything else, the energy supply, as an integrated company. Yeah? That can be some investor, that can also be some public company, some energy supplier, whoever. But the borderline could also be different. That, for example, the farmer is producing the substrates and the biogas, and only the biogas upgrading and the energy system are then related to energy utility, for example. Yeah. Or the producer of the biogas is going one step further. He is also upgrading the biogas to natural gas quality and then selling that gas, and then only to a trader and the energy utilities. And so it's possible, and that's very individual also, it's possible to be part of a short or longer part of the value chain of biogas. And that's something, if you should plan someday a biogas project, that's something what you could have in mind, that the owner of the substrates must never be the operator of the plant if he does not want. It's always possible to find someone else who could operate the plant. Or the owner want to operate, and it's also possible. Yeah? So that's open for a good local solution, I think. And that's one of the very charming points why I like to work also in this biogas sector. One of the charming points of this very high flexibility and complexity of biogas systems. Yeah? So then let's come to some short case studies that I can show you how it could look like. Yeah? And that's an example from Norway, yeah? Where I stood of one of these fermenters here. This one I was on the top here. Very interesting. It's a biogas plant here, located in a wood or paper mill. Yeah? And here the wastewater of the paper mill and the sludges from here are used together with 40,000 tons of dead fish every year, what is coming from the lax farms, salmon farms in Norway. And they are digested here, and then it's produced finally bio-LNG, yeah, here as vehicle fuel and fuel for ships. Yeah. That's one example. Here is a bio-LNG filling, yeah, where it's transported away with trucks, because in Norway there are no gas grids where it could be used. And we have here a farmers cooperative in Germany, where there are produced 6 million cubic meter per year biogas, and a lot of, so altogether almost 100,000 tons per year, chicken manure, pig manure, and energy crops are used to produce also biomethane, what is then injected into the gas grid here. Only one example. Another example is a wastewater treatment plant in the very large city of Hamburg, where you see here with X, that's the fermenters, the digesters, where only sewage sludge is produced, used to produce let me see. No, it's not here. We don't see how much gas is produced. Yeah. But here it's 2.5 million cubic meter wastewater per year. Sorry, that's the input here. And here it's the gas. It's 2.5 million cubic meter per year gas. And yeah, almost 160 million cubic meter wastewater are processed here. Yeah. Yeah, then we have a municipal waste treatment plant in Berlin, in the city of Berlin, yeah, where we also have upgrading. I just skip this picture, and here we have with plug flow fermenters, what you see here in the building. So it's not much visible from outside, I must be honest. But here is produced 60,000 tons per year organic waste. There's also 3.6 million cubic meter per year biomethane injected into the gas grid. Then the digestate is used as fertilizer on the fields outside Berlin. And that's probably a short overview. And what is very important from my point of view, when you do such a nice project, it's very important just to speak about it, to show it. And this is an example from UK, where this bus is powered from the sewage sludge, or from the gas of the sewage sludge from the municipal wastewater treatment plant, and the people see how they drive, and that makes some common sense in the communities. And that's an example from Norway, where they stayed here on the truck, that this truck is driving based on the biogas, what is produced from the manure of the cows, where the milk is also produced. So it's pure cow craft. That's how it's stated. And that's what I wanted to give you an overview on now. It's got faster and faster, is my feeling. But I hope you catch most things. And I am finished, and we can have some questions here. And I see some questions came up. And I hope you were able to follow. But the good thing is that you did record this, and you will always be able to check some information later from this lecture or this workshop I gave. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Frank. The last hour is always the most challenging. The sugar in the brains comes down. So we have actually 2 to 3 questions. The first one is, does the mechanical mixing or pumping acts like kind of inhibitor for biogas digester?
No, there are no experiences like that, except when you have mixers which are that high frequently turning that you destroy the microorganisms. But that makes also from the energy demand perspective no sense, I would say. So typically the mixers are rotating quite slow, and do not destroy the microorganisms, and then we don't see some inhibition of the processes.
So the next question is actually for the economic of the AD on a farm level. So is it feasible if there is only vegetables and you don't have like manure to have a financially viable business
نعم ليلى،
model?
يبدو أننا أمام ضغط.
This is it's always a challenge. The question is, when I see oranges, you typically only have one season of oranges, and then it's a question if you can have substrates the whole year round. And if that is possible, or if you can make your residues storable, that you can have a feed all year round, then it's I would say the key criteria is to what price can you sell the energy from that plant, and then you could get some offers for construction of a biogas plant from companies which are hopefully active in your country, and then that can be a basis for a feasibility calculation. But I think the crucial point is always what energy price can you or do you have to compete with? And if there are no incentives for electricity or energy sales, then it's also a question from my point of view, do you have enough energy demand? What could fit to the energy production from a biogas plant? Or do you have a neighbor what needs so much energy? So that's, I think you have to do three things first. The first is, how can you secure 365 days substrate supply? The second is, how can you, for what price can you sell the energy for yourself or for others? And the third is, what will be the cost of the investment into a biogas plant at your site for your substrate?
Okay, so there are like question about the landfill, which I think I escaped it. Is the AD only financially feasible in full scale in case of sludge or animal manure? I'm not sure what does it mean, the full scale, maybe a big scale, like if it's possible for the decentralized, is it financially viable in the decentralized model or?
Yeah. So what I would say to that is that what I see from industrial biogas plants, when you want to install a new one, it must be so that at least you should have, I would say, 50 to 100 cubic meter per hour biogas production. This is something what you can calculate from the substrates or sewage sludge amount, what is available. And then you could think about that or make further steps to make a feasibility calculation. For smaller plants, I think this is pilot scale, then you need some financial support for investment that you get it feasible. As smaller plants are really hard to get a good investment or feasibility.
Regarding zinc, it can be bad for the digester, but also good at reducing H2S, sulfuric acid. How is this balance?
Yeah, it's always a question of concentration. Yeah. But I would never use zinc for reduction of H2S because it seems to me much too expensive. Yeah. And I would always say zinc has a limitation for the biological process, and I think that will be your crucial point. Yeah, that you don't go over the allowed zinc concentration for the biological process. There's some number on that. Yeah. I'm not really sure about the number in my head now, but there are limitations. What is the maximum zinc concentration? And in that concentration, it has more or less no impact on H2S removal. Yeah. So.
Okay. And the last question is about the leakage in the biogas plants, that there might be leakage and how to control and monitor this leakage in the biogas plant.
Yeah. There's much studies done on that. Yeah? And there is its technology, and technology is never perfect. So especially when it's getting older and older, yeah, then you get sometimes leakages. What is often done now is that you can go with a gas camera, yeah, on the plants, and you can identify leakages, and then when you identify them, you can also avoid them. Yeah? That's very important, and in normal cases, the leakages are not risky because the biogas plant is built as in some explosion safety. Yeah? And these measures are typically avoiding some ignition or everything else. So you should never smoke on a biogas plant, I would say. Yeah? That's important. But there are some safety rules for biogas plants, which can be translated for sure also into English, at least in Germany, but I know also some from European other countries. And if you consider them, then I think it's very safe to operate a biogas plant.
Thank you. So that was the last question. I will ask, okay, the follow-up. What is the use to reducing H2S?
Yeah, in typical plants, it's iron chloride or iron hydroxide, iron oxides, which are used or given into the process as powder or as liquid. Just that within the liquid, H2S is bound. And afterwards, we have typically biological desulfurization, where the microorganisms are living in the gas room and where you inject some few amounts of oxygen that they can live and degrade the H2S. And as last step, typically we have activated charcoal filter to reduce H2S to less than 5 ppm. Independent if you have a gas upgrading or if you just have a CHP unit.
Yes. Thank you very much. Dr. Hani, I see you on the screen. Do you have something to add?
Yeah, at the end, I would like to thank Dr. Frank for his informative and useful workshop. Actually, he tackled very important issues. As we know, waste to energy is part of circular economy nowadays, the important part where we can minimize the waste and recover energy. We had in Jordan actually one plant built a long time ago. However, because of the variation in the feed input to this plant, it has been failed to produce the required biogas amounts. So it's important to control the feed material in order to get the right amount of biogas from it. The other issue is the cleaning of the biogas, because as we know, H2S is corrosive and we need to have a good cleaning system to get pure biogas or methane, at least without any impurities, and extend the life of the pipes and the equipment in the plant. This is another issue. Also, maybe we can say that household, or what you call it, family size ones, where you can have it on the farm level or in the household level with farmers who are holding at least 3 to 4 cows in their households. They can utilize a small scale digester to produce and have energy to have self-sufficiency in where they are away from the grid, for example, electrical grid. Those are things which I wanted to highlight. And once again, thank you, Dr. Frank, for the information.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much for these words.
Okay, so thank you, Dr. Frank. Thank you, everyone, Dr. Hani, Dr. Shiri, and for everyone that stayed with us until the end. So I am closing. If Dr. Frank, do you have anything to add?
No, not really, not really. So if someone wants to build a biogas plant, we can contribute and help.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Always our interest. No.
Yeah.
Good.
So then I have right now 92 people responded to the link, and shortly tomorrow you will receive all the slides and also the respondent. For the student of Dr. Hani and Dr. Shirin, we will probably send separately through the professors a bit of homework to work on and to use the slide and recording to calculate the amount of biogas and energy, to have also some, let's say, homeworks. Thanks a lot again, and have a nice rest of the day and evening. And until next time, our next webinar series, which will be also announced. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much for the audience.
Thanks to the students who attended and participated as well.